everybody. We're back on Industry Night, and today's show is coming to you from my home office. I'm surrounded by my beautiful plants, and I was going to tell you about 85-degree weather, which it's no longer. It is now snowing outside, which is so typical of DC in March. But honestly, I love being in my office for some of my get-togethers because it's always the right place for sort of conversation and community and shaking things up, right? Now, today, I'm joined by two absolute icons in the hospitality industry, Ivy Mix and Lynnette Marrero. Now, I go a little bit back with these two. I mean, I'm sure they don't think they go back with me, but I go back with them to the early days of Speed Rack. In fact, and I know they know this story, but I have to tell it because it's so great. When Speed Rack first came to DC, I was one of the original judges. Mike Isabella, I know, like you're not supposed to say his name, but I say his name because he was there. And we were judging. And the job seemed like, simple, like taste cocktails, pick a winner. What they emphasized to us before the competition was that we were going to taste 32 cocktails. And both Ivy and Lynnette sort of gave us a talking to that, like, at the last event, the judges got really drunk and that we needed to pace ourselves. And I think we were kind of like, yeah, right. We're professionals. We're not worried. But I did say it was 32 cocktails. Now, I want to tell you, I'm a little girl. I'm like 5 feet tall. I'm like 103 pounds. So I was like, give me bread, give me water, give me food. Like I was being very responsible. Mike, on the other hand, I think he was taking shots of whiskeys between every single cocktail. And I think he walked out of there totally fine and not drunk at all. And I don't think I walked out of there. I think I had to be carried out. Anyway, whatever. It was so much fun. And it was so great to be a part of this burgeoning thing that's now all around the country, because even then you could feel that Speed Rack was something special. Now, fast forward more than a decade later, Ivy and Lynnette have turned the idea literally into a global movement, raising more than $1.85 million for breast cancer research, but also creating a platform that has launched countless careers and also, I think, really helped reshape who we see behind the bar. Okay, so now before we get into all of it, I want to give these two icons, legends, if you will, a proper intro. I'm going to start with Ivy Mix, who has probably one of the greatest names ever. She's an award-winning bartender, bar owner, author of Spirits of Latin America and A Quick Drink. She's a James Beard semi-finalist for Outstanding Professional and Cocktail Service. And really one of the most respected voices on Latin American spirits. Lynnette Marrero, no slouch herself. She is a visionary in the cocktail world, a Tales of a Cocktail Visionary Award winner, educator, entrepreneur, partner in Millie's Neighborhood Bar, and someone who has shaped bar programs and mentorship programs across the country. So I'm very excited to be with the two of you today. Thank you so much for joining me in my snowy office here in Washington, D.C.
No worries. At least it's rain here, so I'm just sitting on the corner Millie's bar, watching the folks go by in the
Yeah, you're in New
rain.
York, honey. The snow is coming. I
It's
tell you,
it's
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 snowing
on its
outside.
way.
It's snowing outside my window. I will say that,
Oh no, you're
and I'm
just a
only a
few.
mile
Wait, are you?
away.
I think you're like a mile away. I'm hoping maybe it passes this side.
It's sleeting, sleeting, even better. Yeah.
So let's get it all started. Lynette, I'd love to start with you. Your path took you through some of the most important cocktail bars in New York. Let's start there. Like how did you wind up behind the bar?
Well, I kind of like everyone at that time got behind the bar by accident. Was really not intending for this to be my career. I actually very intentionally did not get into hospitality. I was pursuing musical theater, Broadway, that whole shebang, and I really was a bit allergic to people saying, "Well, what do you really do?" So I was like, "Well, I'm not going to be in a position and be in a place where that's going to happen to me all the time." But then, I was out of town doing a pre-Broadway show in San Diego at Lohe Playhouse, and 9/11 happened. And I was with an entire group of people, and we're like, all right, in 2 months, we're going back to New York. What are we going to do? And I was like, okay, well, I was temping in offices like those buildings. I'm never doing that again. So I better figure out what this hospitality thing is. And I walked into this wine bar that was opening called Punch and Judy on Clinton Street in New York, which you'll know for famous places like WD-50. It was not open yet. And I walked in, and, the guys who owned it, I think pretty much knew I didn't know what I was doing, but they just asked me like, name three grape varietals, and I'm like, I don't know. I drink Pinot Grigio, Merlot, Pinot Noir, and they're like, great, you got three grapes, good job. And I was like, fantastic, and I learned there. People at that time, working there were like Michael Chernow, who ended up going on to Meatball Shop and Seymour's, and so it was this crazy little environment that I ended up in, and Wiley Dufresne, his father Dewey, were regulars as they were opening those places. So I got a very quick introduction into hospitality, I would say. Loved it. It's one of those places where like you could work your butt off, walk around a room, pop great bottles, make a ton of money. And then I really fell in love with that environment. And then one of the guys who was working there, his wife was running a martini lounge down, like up in the Irving Place area, right across actually where Megan Dorman's Dear Irving is, called Sabar. And he's like, I think you should go try there. And I walked in, and it was a predominantly femme bar. It was
It
all
was at Julie
women.
Reiner.
This wasn't Julie's. This was prior to meeting Julie, but I met Julie right after that. And so we're in this bar, and it's all women there, besides like the GM's nephew, who we had bar back, and he would bartend sometimes. But the bar manager, like the head bartender there, for lack of that word, because there weren't really head bartenders, started teaching me drinks. And Amber's like, I think you're going to really get this. And so when we would close our Thursday night shifts, we would go to this new bar that was opening across town. So this was the Flatiron Lounge on 19th Street, and we'd go in, and I was like, "Wow, this place is insane! It's so
So wait,
beautiful."
what year is this? Is this
This
like
is '03, so I
okay?
started
So
walking
it's
in
like
'03.
it's like as the Renaissance is really taking hold,
Yeah, like
right?
the bar I was working at was making, craft cocktails, but we were making like chocolate martinis, in black or white or mixed, or you could have a graham cracker martini. We didn't really know the meaning of those words. But walking into Flatiron, I would see a beautiful drink, and it was naturally colored by the beautiful tropical fruits. So, Julie was using fresh juices and the pulvergram. I was like, this is crazy. You can have these great cocktails, but they can be made better. And so over a year, I would go in as a regular, and then in '04, I started working there and started as a server. Like, yeah, I had a little bit of knowledge. I clearly did not have enough to hop behind that bar, but that's where I met people like Toby Maloney, Phil Ward, Katie Stipe, and all of those people were in this place, and we're kind of like a little band of misfits, working in this cocktail bar where like down the block there were like clubs like Bed and all these places that were doing cocktails, but you made way more money, and we're just working with bigger ice, harder work, making less money.
I
But
know,
I
but
fell
that's
in love with the
but
theater of it.
if I may, well, theater makes sense given your background, and my son is a bartender at Silver Lion, and he was a theater major as well. So I
There you
think there's
go.
something to that because it is dramatic, especially what was going on at Bed was not what was going on at what you were doing. I mean, let's just be
No.
clear. And so, Ivy, I'd love to pose the same sort of question for you. You know, Latin American spirits, your dedication to that, and how did you get pulled into the world in the first place?
Yeah, so I think so many people, I just fell into it. I first started bartending, not cocktail bartending. I started bartending because I moved to Guatemala when I was 19 to I went to a very liberal art school, and we had like a fall term and a spring term, then we had a winter term. We did field work. And as a freshman, I didn't have a field, so I was like, I want to move to a different country. I come from central Vermont. It's from a town of like 800 people, very, very small. And I was like, I just want to go see the world. What can I do? So I ended up in Guatemala. It was 19. Social media didn't exist. Like, well, I had a Friendster account to like date myself, and I started hanging out in this bar every day. And then after about a few months, when I had to go home after this term was done, they were like, "Oh, you have a tab." And I was like, "Oh, how much?" And they were like, not insignificant. And I was
Sure.
like, "Oh, shit." like,
I guess I better pay that.
I guess I better pay that. And I'm like, beers cost like 70 cents. Like, am I going to call my mom and be like, Mom, I got like $1,000 and I owe, you know? So like, you can work to pay it off. So I started working, and I made the realization that I could be making money. Like, I was making money, granted paying off a bill I already had, in a place that I would have been in anyway. Like, I was in this bar every day. It was Cafe No, still exists, Cafe No Stay in Antigua, Guatemala. I ended up moving down there. I lived there part-time throughout college. I ended up working in the bar about 5 to 6 months out of the year when I wasn't in university, and just really fell in love with this, like, bartending. When I say bartending, I mean, like, the social aspect. Like, I was pouring beer shots, whatever. It happened to be a bar that specialized in tequila and mezcal. It's where illegal mezcal got its start. So I used to go to Oaxaca we would take these buses up to Oaxaca and start learning about mezcal. So a lot of people came to mezcal after already knowing about spirits. I knew nothing about nothing. Like, I couldn't even make a Manhattan. I was like, I could pour you a beer and a shot, no problem, but I knew a lot about mezcal because I was just going up to this, and other Mexican spirits, because I was just going over the border and looking at stuff at a young age. Moved to New York right after the economy collapsed in 2008, and that's when the cocktail re-evolution was kind of really bubbling up. I think no surprise. I always say, like, I think a lot of people that maybe would have otherwise gone into other lines of work, especially creative people, actors. I personally had a fine art degree. A lot of these people, like, there just weren't that many jobs to be had after the economy collapsed. But at that point, this was like we were not in the health craze moment that we're in right now. So it's like, everyone's like, oh, recession? Like, everyone used to say that drinking is recession proof, right? So the revolution.
Everybody used to say lots of things were recession proof,
I know,
right?
I
Like
know.
Washington, D.C., they used to say it was recession proof. Not when you shut the steel mill down, you know, like
exactly.
shut it down and it's not recession proof. So
Exactly.
but I think I heard an interview with you once where you sort of said, like, when you came to New York and you first started getting into the bar, working in bars, you weren't being taken seriously behind the bar. People just wanted you to be a cocktail waitress.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. When I got a job in a cocktail bar, I started discovering that people were doing, like, creative stuff in cocktail. Like, I was like, wow, I love bartending. I love mezcal and tequila and all these spirits. Look at all these people doing this really artistic stuff. I have a fine art degree and I'm making money. Like, I was working for free in an art gallery, and I was like, seems like this is what I should be doing. Like, let's, but I want to be behind the bar. I want to, like, make the drinks.
I want to ask kind of both of you, like, you're talking about, mezcal, well over 10 years ago, at a time when it did not have the broad sort of knowledge, the consumer did not have the broad knowledge in the United States that they have now. And there's a lot of, not to go male versus female, but, I certainly have had my head patted a lot of times, like when it comes to wine or when it comes to spirits, especially brown liquor for women, or I can't imagine mezcal. What was the response to you all in the early days?
Oh, people thought I was crazy. I was also really young, right? I was like
Right.
23. And I was like, oh, you've never been to Oaxaca? Oh, if you walk down this place, and then people were like, what the hell? And yeah, I think that people were like, who do you think you are? But like, at that point, like, there weren't brands taking everyone and their cousin down on a brand
Oh,
trip.
well, that's also true. It was a totally different world.
It was a totally different time, a totally different world. But I think that, like, that's also how I, like, got. So to kind of rewind, I asked this cocktail bar I was in if I could be a bartender, and the response I got was like, "No, you're a cocktail waitress." And I was like, "Well, that's kind of like, I'm not even good at it. I drop trays like crazy. I break so
Condescending.
much glassware. Like, put me
Right.
behind the bar. I'm better back there, But my knowledge of mezcal was how I started getting my jobs. Like, people in the United States were just starting to understand what it was. People were still like, oh, it's like smoky tequila, And I was like, well, not really. And, like, there's always there's like all this stuff, and I really like it. And I'm not saying I know everything, but I have actually been there, and I can, like, tell you a little bit about it. And yeah, that's kind of how I got my foot in.
And so, Lynette, just a little bit back to you. I mean, so at this time that we're kind of talking about, you started a little bit earlier than Ivy. We're also when, like, the term speakeasy is being used. I mean, I feel like we're in a pendulum swing. It's being used again, like crazy, like crazy. But I'm all for things that sound sexy. So, but you're at that moment, both of you, when the true speakeasy is really, becoming a wave, not just in New York City, but nationally, and also sort of the care to the cocktail, right? Like what Ivy's talking about, Lynette, what you're talking about. So let's talk about like 2010-ish. Like, where were you both? How did you wind up together? And what was happening for you personally in the bar scene that was really exciting you or turning you on?
Yeah, I mean, I think, it goes a little bit back to probably like '08, '09, because when I was in that early stage, in those early phases, there was a lot more camaraderie because we were all bucking a system and, trying to bring it back, trying to convince people to drink things like gin instead of flavored vodkas, and trying to, bring people through. And at that point, after I left Flatiron, I trained into a space called Freeman's, which is, 20 almost 21-year-old restaurant now, but who was doing kind of like a rock and roll style of this type of thing where craft cocktails are being made in a, back of an alley, kind of a speakeasy for a restaurant, but if you found it, you were there, but very trend setting. And so I think things started shifting. But you had um, a lot more people coming into the industry around 8, 9, 10. Right? Earlier, it was, people like Simon Ford and Charlotte Boise coming into our bars with, gin and these other products, or Eric, Seed bringing in, Koki and all these other ingredients that we needed to make these classic cocktails. But you started seeing a bigger distribution of all of those between 8, 9, right? And you started seeing them all over the country.
But do you
Um,
think we do a little chicken and eggs? Because there's a couple of things going on there. So there's the need for these products that weren't as massively available. So that's number one. But then there was also a tremendous change in laws. So, like legally, lots of places did not allow brewing or distilling. So there was a huge ability for people to create entirely new businesses where there hadn't been before.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was, right? I remember at that around those times you had a lot more micro distilleries popping up as well, changing the landscape. I think of people like Rob Cooper, who at that time reinvented, Saint Germain, bringing it back to an old timey vibe, but it being very new as a new ingredient and creating like the new, the first bartender's ketchup. And that we all created around. And so there was just all these different things. Cocktail competitions were happening, and we were getting to travel around and engage with other cities.
And when did the two of you meet?
We met at a bar called. That's where we met. Yeah, that's where we met. We met at a bar called Maya Well. I was cocktail waitressing. It was East Village. Rest in peace. It was kind of like the first Mexican agave spirit focused cocktail, like legit cocktail scene in New York City. And it was a Saturday night, and Phil Ward is the owner, and came in and was like, "Hey, we had a no call, no show. This is Lynette. She's gonna be working the floor with you tonight." And I was like, "Oh my god!" Like it's a Saturday night. We're at like one of the most popular spots in town. And I was like, "Here are 4 tables for you. I'm gonna take the rest of it." Like it's like we had like 25 drinks on the menu. I'm like, I don't even know how she's gonna do this. But like, okay, fine. Like but bartenders will tell you how to garnish. Like I don't know. So I'm like running around, and like after an hour or two, Lynette's just like right there with me, and she's like running my drinks to the tables, and I was like, oh, this is like much better than I thought it was gonna go. I was like, this is great. The shift ended up going very well. We went out and had a drink after the shift, and Lynette started telling me a little bit about her life, what she's been doing in the industry at the time. She really had like many hats. She was consulting, she was doing brand work, she was the president of something called LUPEC, Ladies United for the Preservation of Endangered Cocktails. And I was like, cool.
Wow.
Like,
You're like, oh
yeah,
my God, this should
yeah,
be
I was like,
reversed.
how are
Right.
you? Yeah. So then I was like, well, I want to join LUPEC, and that was kind of how it started.
And Lynette, with running Loop, being a part of LoopHack, and what was it about that was so important to you? And where did the sparks fly between the two of you about more that you could do? Like, obviously speed rack.
Right. So when I started doing brand work, as Ivy mentioned, it was the first time I was pushed out of my comfort zone, because I had my crew, the people that I had, they all went over and opened Pegu, and then half of them went open Deaf and Co. And so my rotation was very insular. And so when I had to start doing brand work, I started having exposure to more bars and going into more places. And that's where I started seeing more women. And I was like, wow, these people are so incredible. And they're, killing it at the top of their game. But why don't I know them? I thought it was very curious that I didn't have exposure to them. I never read about them. And so, that year I went to, this was like 08, 09-ish, went to Tales of the Cocktail, and I went to the bookstore area, and there was a book written by the Boston Lupac chapter, and I met Misty Kalkofen and Kitty Amen. And I was like, what are you guys doing? Number one, how did you come with a cocktail book? Why are there all these femme bartenders doing cool things? And they talked to me about how they were using bartending as a vehicle for feminism, and also to throw events in their city to raise money for women's based charities. So, like, great idea. Awesome. So we got together, and then I started engaged with other LUPEC chapters all around the country, and we were all starting to replicate this in our town. So when Ivy, this kind of was another opportunity. When I met Ivy, I'm like, come here and do this, because this is the place where we're taking over, all these like dude run bars, and we're taking it over for a night. And I'm slotting in guest bartenders that people should know, and basically kind of creating a little bit of like, hey, looking for new people. So when we sat together, Ivy kind of randomly ran into me one day. I was in Williamsburg for the Super Bowl, and she was like, hey, I think it'd be really great if we did something that was more, that could actually, well, it goes back to the entire LUPEC chapters all met and we're doing the Manhattan Cocktail Classic. So since Ivy is part of New York, we were there running it like the CAP program for Tails. We were doing the batching, prepping the seminars, all the things. And Ivy was on a break with a friend, and they were just approached to be in a video. And she's like, I don't know why they're asking us. And they're like, well, we don't know any women. And Ivy's like, there's literally like 25, 30 women downstairs. Okay. And then that was kind of the idea of like, we were just tokenized, and what if you didn't tokenize and you had a whole bunch of women compete on a stage? And so the whole idea was like, what could we borrow from food shows, put in an entertaining format, but also show how incredibly talented these bartenders are, because working a service well is about ticket times, fast, getting it out, but making sure it goes out and your guest is willing to pay upwards of $16 to enjoy that cocktail.
Well, so let's talk about the original speed rack, the first one, sort of what happened there. And then we can fast forward to how you're executing. How many are you doing a year now?
Well, we're finally 6 years later getting like back after COVID. We're kind of like getting,
Right.
but like we're doing about 10, 8 to 10 a year, I would say.
I mean, that's a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, they are, you know, animals, each one a
They
separate
are.
animal.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the original one, how it got executed, and talk about the changes today.
Yeah, so we kind of got together. We were like, what's this going to be? What's the speed rec thing? We know it's to try to create a platform for women, femmes to stand on in a male dominant industry, and we want to raise money for breast cancer. And then because Lynette had been in the industry for longer than me and also had experience working with brands, she was like, let's have meetings with these people and this people. And like, we know we need to get enough money to put on the event. The brands can make punch. They can serve it to the people around the room. And then we'll watch this competition on stage. We'll use their brands to make the cocktails. And through Lupec, that pretty much just put out an open call. It was like, who wants to compete?
But did you know that you were going to bracket it, and then, I mean,
Yeah.
do the guys still dress up? And
We
is
had
that still
we
part of
had
it?
not really. Sometimes
New
they
York
do.
didn't dress up. I think it was very different. Like, it was definitely
Was that just
more,
DC? Was that a
not
one-off?
just DC, a few places. I think DC and probably like all the European ones, which really kind of tells you like DC was a bunch of like prep school boys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Prep school boy bar bags versus I'm like, what's the difference? Because New York was like, guys from EO in t-shirts, and
Right.
it was not at all dressing up. That just got somewhere. People started doing it out of the guys trying to fit in, or
Yeah. Exactly. And then,
Well, I think it had to do
anyway,
with giving deference, right? Like at that time, it was, I think the guys who participated, like Derek Brown is stuck in my head, and Todd Thrasher. And I just think at that time, they were at the very top here in DC. And I think that they were really like, no, we want these women to shine. We want them to have their moment in the sun. They gave the stage, and that meant a lot to a lot of the women in that room.
yeah. I think, and still now, like, all the events now, back in the day when we first started, we were like, okay, all of the men who are the ones who usually have the spotlight, they're going to be the ones who are going to be bar backing and literally supporting the competitors who are going to be the women and femmes on stage. Now we have like old competitors who are on stage bar backing. It's very, it's not so gender rigid.
I like that.
Feedback is a little bit more fluid now. There's definitely a little bit more fluidness.
But we're also not breaking. This is not. You have already. I don't want to say broken the glass ceiling, but it is not strange. I mean, for other things maybe, but people who are into the cocktail scene, not just on the East Coast or the West Coast, but nationally, aren't surprised to see anybody of any gender behind the bar. Do you know what I mean? It's not specific to men anymore.
Right.
So I think that really changes everything.
Exactly. So, yeah.
So how does it break down now? Lynette, walk me through the event.
Sure. So we start with online applications. First we put out a call for bartenders to apply. We ask them to kind of talk a little bit about where they are, where their venues are, what's happening in their location, how diversity, where women, like the status of women in those locations. And then we ask them to just upload a video, just any video, but just something to kind of showcase their personality. We then select a group from there, usually around 25 or so, into the live competition on stage. So then once they get to the Ivy emails them, they get a range of 6 cocktails. Any 4 combination can be called. On the day of prelims, we then, they come into the room, they have their time to set up, they have they get their 4 cocktail round, and they do a preliminary competition. And the rules are different, right? For this one, we're like, really, you want to be as fast as you can. We're not using fancy ice. We're using usually whatever like the venue has. Sometimes it's good cold draft. Sometimes just like chip ice. We're asking them to like the drink in a way of like, this is a good club drink. Have you got it? And yes, so is that a margarita? It's a margarita. Then the top, we seed them based on their timing. So from 1 to 8. And then we bracket them in, 1 versus 8, 2, 7, 3, 6, 4, 5. And then that's how it goes on stage. And then on stage, it's an instant elimination. So you go in your quarterfinal round, you make your 4 drinks, your drinks get delivered to the judges. The judges have drinks from the pink bar and the black bar. They add penalty seconds based on execution. And then the bartender with the fastest time after penalties moves on to the next round until we have.
I just want to say for the record, that is a lot of math for the judges to figure out. I mean,
it is.
I'm just saying.
Well, we just tell the judges to like,
it sounds really difficult.
Feel it. Don't worry about counting it. Like you're just thinking about, would you pay, $16, $17, $18 for this drink? Like, what were you expecting? And the quarterfinal rounds, we ask, the judges to kind of build that guest experience and guest relationship. You kind of call it like, some people are like bone dry drinks. Some people like a sweeter drink, and you kind of have to start learning how the judge likes their drinks. And then, that gets a little more difficult as you go along. And then you're like, okay, I'm making a drink for them again. And the last time they were like, hey, your margarita could have had a quarter simple. I like a little sweeter. And now you're going to make them a sidecar. You better maybe think about a half rim of sugar on that.
That is amazing. But for people who haven't been to Speed Rack, there is a whole event going on around the show. So do you want to talk about sort of that activation and how that has grown?
Yeah, so even from the first one when we were like, okay, we're going to have brands serving punch around the room. And like we're going to have a playlist, and that's going to be it. Still, we have all of our brand sponsors around. We have a stage, and around the stage, brands have their little booths. They have swag. They have punch, they have cocktails, they have canned cocktails, they have all this stuff, and you have like so many brands. So everything from like Old Forester bourbon to like Hendrick's gin to Diplomatico rum to, you know, Pathfinder, non-alcoholic Amaro. There's like so much.
I was going to ask, is there an NA part?
Yeah, we have a whole NA section. We've got a few different NA options there. So that's obviously a big part of drinking culture nowadays. So we have some options there. But yeah, when Speed Rec is going on, you know, there's a stage, there's competition. It's like roller derby meets Top Chef
Totally.
meets, you know, like a feminist punk concert. And when that's going on is great, but each round only takes like 2 minutes, right? Like the actual bartending portion of it is pretty short because they're fast. Then the judging happens and whatever. But when that's not happening, we've got DJs who are spinning, who are like bring the vibes. People are going to different of the sponsor booths and like tasting what's out there. Like some brands will have like a special bottle, be like, oh, this is like a limited edition. Did you know we have it here? And like, come check it out. People leave. Every brand has like their own swag, and people literally leave. They come in looking normal, and they come out pink.
Yes,
that's
makes
the vibe.
that makes so much sense.
Yeah, that's the
well,
vibe.
you know, given how long you guys have been doing this, have you done over 120 events? Is that correct?
Yeah, at least I would say at this point, yeah.
From where the two of you sit now, Speed Rec has probably launched countless careers. When you see competitors today, do you see the next generation of leaders behind the bar? And what does that look like to both of you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just give an example of like something that just happened today. So, you know, it was interesting coming back from COVID, because COVID, the industry changed drastically. So many people were like, I'm not doing that anymore. And then a whole new group of people had to fill those spots, right? So it's an interesting time. And last year we had this person, Sky, compete in Boston. Sky was going through kind of like a tough time in their life, just a lot of stuff going on. They ended up winning the Boston regionals, the New England regionals, and just like totally being excellent. And then this year they applied again. And before the application was even due in New England, she wrote us and was like, hey, like, I really want to get the word out. Like, what can I do to help? Just did a lot of activation, not only in Boston, but all across New England. And then she wrote us just yesterday being like, she was at the New York competition as well. And she was like, you know what? Like, after thinking Speed Rec means so much to me, but I think that I can be much better, quote unquote, outside the ring. And I was like, she's like, I want to like take on this other role and like help people bring into it, and like take more of a mentorship role. And I'm like, you are now,
You're
like, I can see you
right.
being the face. Like, you're going to now do something. Like, you care about this, and you care enough about the industry that you want to bring up people behind you and underneath you. Like, you're leaving the door open for the people behind you. And I'm like, great. Like, I was just so proud of her. I mean, like, I'm just like, that's so cool. That you don't need the guts and the glory.
We should always pull up a chair, right? There should always be a chair for those next to us.
But a lot of people pull up, leave a chair, and they just still sit in theirs, you know? Which is like, fine, it's your right. But I was just like, good for you. Like, she's young.
Yeah, I mean, I think you see that. That's kind of some of the examples, but even, you know, so many more of the bartenders who've been through the Speed Rack, we're in generations now. So we started post-pandemic a program where you know, barring from ballroom, we have houses, and the houses are the group of bartenders going to the national finals, and each house has a mother, you know, so we're like, all your baby's going to walk that catwalk, and they're going to do Speed Rack, and you're going to make sure that they're all fabulous. And it created, you know, so we tapped into, you know, within the brands that were sponsoring those houses, former Speed Rack bartenders, and they lead those teams with heart and passion and put in extra time to make sure that they're set up. And it really created this beautiful experience that now, no matter what happens, if you're on a team and you get to the Speed Rack Nationals, there's this community you've built that goes with you, and they stay in touch. And they're, you know, we saw this year too. So many people were stepping up to mentor in each city and run trainings. You know, in Chicago, our winner from 2 years ago, Katie was like, okay, I really want to train people. And so really put, you know, her mind onto what can I support the community and these next bartenders. So I think what we've managed to do, and I think as an industry, is recognize how we can use the vehicle and use the SPREC training to keep growing our communities, right? We all are working in spaces. You want to work with people who are motivated, have career on the mind, and when they go through a program like Speed Rack, there's an intention and they're showing up to work with a different mindset. I think everyone just is about refilling that well of more talented people to come along with you. As if you're going to move into the next position, you're like, but I can't move to my position until I find new people who are going to take the next step. And you want to see that that's being filled with people who are passionate, diversity, and different people who think differently than you. And so the game has changed just by even how the bartenders work these days. So it's really fascinating to see that.
Well, I know you guys are going to be here in DC. It'll be after the show airs. But what are
So you can buy your tickets. If you haven't bought a ticket, buy your ticket.
You buy your ticket for next year. The show's going to
There you
air
go.
after the
Oh,
event.
after Monday. Oh,
Yeah,
bummer.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Sorry. So the question kind of is like, what do you? I'm sort of curious. Like, if you could crystal ball it, like, what are you looking forward to in DC?
I would say DC, it's a lot of new people. There are some returning bartenders actually not from DC and a few from DC, but there are a lot more new faces. We actually, a little bit more of the DMV kind of came through. So there's some competitors from Philadelphia throwing their hat in the ring. So I think that's going to be interesting to see just a couple of different styles. We have Baltimore as well as some core DC. So even the folks from DC, it's a few new people. So excited to see, right now, like with the gastronomy and all the new bars and things opening up, like how that's influenced and maybe shaped what's happening in DC, and we'll see how their style is.
Yeah, I agree. I think that just like how DC has changed, how the whole area has changed and really become much, much more of like a mecca for cocktails. I mean, it's pretty impressive, It's not necessarily a huge area, and I think that I'm excited to see what people will bring from that area. That's only in recently really like been this like there's so much energy
Yeah,
happening.
I mean, I feel like pre-pandemic, we were like on this rise, and then the pandemic, did shrink things incredibly. But then in the last, couple years, it's just been an explosion of really interesting places doing it differently, from like the Bar Canas to the Press Club to, Silver Line, etc. Like there's so many people doing great things. I want to, before we got on, we were kind of chit-chatting about what was happening in the news, and we were talking about Noma and sort of the downfall. And given when you all were coming up in this world as women in a highly male dominated field. And I mean, I was in a field that was that way as well. I got my head, pat a lot, and not only by men, but also by women, um, people who judged me based on how I looked, or people who judged me because I created something that they were unfamiliar with, right? Like I had a website that wrote about what was happening in DC, nobody knew. So I got a lot of like weird treatment in the beginning. But I have a big mouth, and even though I'm tiny, I'm kind of powerful.
Mighty.
So I'm mighty.
Yeah.
People are afraid of me usually. So, but for you, and given what's happened with Noma and sort of that drastic downfall just this week, what do you see, and what did you go through? And I mean, the comeuppance is correct, but are we still there? Did the Me Too movement not do it enough? Have we not moved the needle enough? I mean, what are your thoughts?
Um, I mean, I think that many things have changed, right? Like many in people are much more aware. Like, a lot of times, like education is the number one problem. Like, I am a true believer that most people aren't assholes; they're just uneducated. So it's like if you can educate people, that's important. So diversity is good, et cetera, et cetera. That being said, I think if you look at any industry, not just our industry, most people with a seat at the table, the C-suite, the C-suites, or whatever you want to say, they're probably men. And if you look at ownership breakdown, like if you look at the world's 50 best bars and see how many women owners there are, not a lot. Not a lot. If you look at even like Tales of
Especially if you look at individually owned by women. Sure,
No,
maybe
no, no.
co-owner. That's even smaller.
even smaller. Oh
Yeah.
yeah, if it's only women,
Absolutely.
like even fewer, so it's a small percentage, and that is how you make actual change, in my opinion. That being said, I also think that there's a certain, like, what I do think is changing slightly. When I was first getting into the bartending industry, like like femininity was like not good. Like a lot of like people were just like, oh, I'm just gonna like be one of the dudes, and like I'm gonna like dress in the suspenders, and I'm just gonna like be one of the guys. And there were certain people, Lynette being one of them actually, also like Natasha David, who like really embraced being feminine. And when I say feminine and masculine, I just mean them as qualities. I don't mean them as genders. But like
Understood. No, no,
there
no,
was
and I
like
understand.
there was like a real like I'm gonna be feminine. And I remember particularly watching Natasha David bartend one time and being like, that's so cool. Like that's so cool that she's not like whack whack like I'm like so hardcore and I'm gonna like break down walls. She was just like very beautiful to watch bartend, and I think that that's now much more socially like acceptable, and I think that's good.
Yeah, and I would think it's kind of funny. I think we keep seeing shifts and waves, right? So when I first got in, you had places like Milk and Honey, and Sasha was beautifully egalitarian, right? Although everyone served and everyone bartended, didn't matter. I think there may have been, actually, I don't think there was ever one person who worked there who didn't also hop behind the bar, and that was men and women. And when I started, the people who actually pushed me, at Flatiron Lounge to get behind the bar were Phil Ward and Toby Maloney, because I worked solo shifts with them on Monday and Tuesday. And they're like, well, actually, she hops behind here and helps us out. Maybe we should train her up. And then, Toby recommended me to Freeman's and kind of really pushed my career in different ways, by pushing me towards restaurant bars. And I think that was that. But there were people, and I knew who they were, who started, right? So I think it's always happens as things start becoming popular and more famous, and there's money involved, whether or accolades, it got more broy and like pushing people aside. And culturally, we kind of talked about this in a session of Tales on Tour. I was never the person who's like, look at me, I did this, blah blah blah, hey, did you see what I did? Because that's not socially acceptable. I'm like, people will just recognize I'm doing hard work, so everything I did was just kind of like persist, do. Like when I started doing consulting and all those things, not many people were just doing that. If I, once I pulled away from being at a venue, people were like, but where do you work? I'm like, I work everywhere. There wasn't this like, you could just be a bartender or whatever without being attached to something, unless you were writing tons and tons of books. But you did have some people lead with this very intensity that I thought was maybe a little like, I didn't think you had to be unkind. You didn't have to be unkind. You didn't have to be an asshole. You could still be firm. Like there was, I'm a
Listen,
quadruple Scorpio. There's
people
no way I didn't tell people like, don't do that, do this, behave. But
people
there also
make
can be kindness and
mistakes.
love.
Right. People make mistakes who work for you, right? People make mistakes. You can, I mean, I have 5 children. I mean, I have certainly let them know when they have done something inappropriate or wrong. And we all have levels of doing that. But there is a way to always, either if you've gone too far, apologize for it, of course. We all lose our tempers. It is not a pretty sight. You keep your hands to yourself always,
Yeah,
right? Like the
that's number
biggest
one.
number two. I mean, yeah, number one and number two, right? And, but I think there was this real culture for a while, especially this shame circling, like, embarrassing people intentionally. Like, I mean, that just, my whole
But
body,
then look
like,
at the chefs, right? So there's a lot of like femme chefs from that period.
mhm.
Some went that way and
Yeah.
were
Oh,
tough
no.
and
We
brutal.
could name them.
But then we'll shout out the good ones. Then there's people like Sarah Grunberg from Monteverde in Chicago. It's been open almost 11 years now, and there's only ever been a joy and a kindness that comes through in her food and her work environment, her place, and it's packed because of that, right?
Well,
It's
yeah,
standing the
but
test of
here's the
time.
thing. I think there are some people, and I'm sure we all could discuss them, who are like, I had to go through it, so should you. Like, instead of being like, I had to go through that, I don't want anybody to go through that. I'm going to do it differently.
There's certainly
right?
like there can be a certainly like there's room for one here. That one's gonna be me, and when you see it, when you feel it. You can just be like, okay, I'm probably gonna be here too. I'm gonna try anyway. But you have to like tread lightly on those kind of like
Agreed.
yeah.
All right. I have to wrap us up. So, quick speed round of our own. Very quickly. Lynette, I'm going to start with you. First cocktail you ever made.
I was a flat iron martini.
Okay. What was in it?
Soleil Orange, Lillet Blanc. What else do we put in it? But it was like the best, delicious, clear, clean, fruity martini that was clear.
Okay. Amazing. All right. Ivy, what is a underrated bar tool?
A metal straw because you can stir with it and then straw test at the same time.
Okay. That is a good one. All right. For both of you, what's the last drink you had that really impressed you?
I had a 50-50 martini at a new bar called Hello Hello in New York that had forged gin avocado pit. It was so good. And it wasn't, it was clear martini. So I was just really fascinated by how they were using the avocado pit. Normally you see it in orgeat. So I was very impressed by what they were doing with it. It was delicious.
Cool. Ivy?
Yeah, actually, the drink that this was like the last cocktail I actually tried. So it was the other night at Speed Rack. So in the final round, we do dealer's choice, and dealer's choice is a judge says, "I want something," and you really just like you got to make it right then and there. It's like if someone walks into your bar and they're like, "I don't know what I want, and I just want this." So the prompt was make me a Negroni variation from Suzu. And Zoe, who won, did this kind of like white Negroni variation with Mezcal, and I would taste it. I mean, not to say that they're bad, but sometimes the dealer's choices are just okay at best. And I was like, that shit is good. I would drink that. I don't even like Mezcal cocktails, and that is legit good. So I need to remember to ask her for the spec. But I was very impressed. She just pulled it out 5-10 minutes, and then that was what she knocked out with. And I was like, I don't like Mezcal cocktails. Don't tell anyone. And
All right, well, I will tell you. So, I get cocktails poured for me all the time, but I was at the Pink Flamingo. I'm a wine girl. That's my go-to, or bubbles, obviously. But I was at the Pink Flamingo in Baltimore, where the bartender shook up he's like, "What do you like?" I was like, "Not too fruity, not too sweet. Actually, no fruit, no sweet. I like it spicy, but well balanced." And he put together a spicy mezcal cocktail for me. It was really good. Because I'll drink any spirit. I'm not spirit specific. But the taste and balance is really important. Okay, so anyway, where can we find you guys? Where can we keep up on Speed Rack? How do we travel and go to all the fabulous places that you are? Where do we do this?
Yeah, you can follow me I'm just at Ivy Mix. Lynette is at Drinks at 6, the number, not spelled out. And Speed Rack is just at speed-rack.com. .com. Just at speed-rack _rack. Wait, speed_rack is Instagram. There's too many dashes.
I am going to put it correctly in the show notes.
Don't ask
okay,
me
so don't worry about it. All right, I need you guys to hold out for just a sec while I wrap this up. Ivy Mix, Lynnette Marrero, two people who didn't just build careers in hospitality. You guys have changed the industry, and I'm so delighted to have you on my show today. Through Speed Rack and their bars, their books, their mentorship, the movement just continues to open doors for so many people. So, as I mentioned, it's too late for the show, but it happened on March 16th, so we can hear all about it. But if you want a deeper dive into the cocktail culture, you should check out their book, A Quick Drink, which we did not get to talk about. I love you both for joining me. I'm so excited to see not only learn more about where you've been, but where you're going. And thank you for joining me on today's industry night. So much is going on, not just locally here in the DMV, but nationally and internationally. Everything you heard here today, you can find on the list, areyouwantit.com, the online e-zine that tells you everything. Of course, you want to follow me on all the platforms at NYCCINELLIS, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm not on X anymore. It's a personal choice. It's really the Instagram. But of course, this show is now on YouTube. So check it out. And don't miss the shorts, because the shorts are the best part. So thank you all for joining me. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule. Everybody be safe out there and have a delicious week.